You are ugly. In ancient times, that is. Walk through the ancient world, looking the way you do right now, with your tan, your gym build, your straight white teeth and your two separate eyebrows, and plenty of people would have found you plain at best. A few of the things you spend good money on today would have marked you as poor, unhealthy, or strange. Back then, beautiful meant something else entirely. In ancient Egypt, men and women both lined their eyes with thick black paint. In Greece, a woman might darken the space between her brows until they joined into a single line across her face. The Maya hung small beads in front of babies' eyes so they would grow up cross-eyed, because crossed eyes were considered beautiful. Some cultures strapped boards to infants' skulls to mold them into a long, sloping shape. Others filed their teeth into points or dyed them black on purpose. This is what ancient people actually found beautiful, the quirks they prized, and the things they found genuinely hideous. Start with skin, because this one showed up almost everywhere. For most of history, pale skin was the mark of a beautiful person, and the reason was simple. Pale skin meant you did not work outside. You were not out in a field under the sun all day. Someone else did that for you, which meant you had money, land, or servants. Tanned skin meant labor, and labor meant you were poor. So people went to real lengths to stay pale. Wealthy Roman women coated their faces with chalk and white lead powder. In Egypt and across Europe, people used creams and powders to lighten the skin, many of them made with lead and mercury. Women carried parasols and stayed indoors on purpose. A pale, untouched face told everyone who saw you that your hands had never done a hard day's work. There was a cruel catch to all of it. The same lead paint that made a face look smooth and flawless slowly damaged the skin underneath, leaving it grey, scarred, and broken out. The usual answer was more paint, a thicker coat to cover the damage the last coat had caused. Some of the most admired faces in the ancient world belonged to people quietly ruining their own skin to keep up. Body type carried the same kind of meaning, and what they found beautiful was the reverse of today. In most of the ancient world, a fuller, heavier body was the attractive one. Soft arms, a rounded stomach, wide hips, and a bit of extra weight all said the same thing. This person eats well, every day, without fail. In a world where a bad harvest or a long winter could starve a whole village, carrying extra weight meant you had a steady food supply and the money to keep it coming. It also pointed to health and to a woman's ability to have children and survive it. You can see it in what they made. The oldest carvings of women, going back tens of thousands of years, show wide hips, heavy bellies, and full figures. Egyptian, Greek, and Roman art celebrated soft, rounded bodies. Across parts of Africa and the Pacific, families fattened young women on purpose before marriage, sometimes keeping them indoors for weeks to put on as much weight as possible, because a larger bride showed her family was wealthy and she was ready for children. A thin body meant the opposite. It said hunger, hard labor, or illness, the look of someone barely getting by. The lean, cut figure people pay trainers and diet coaches to build today would have looked to most ancient eyes like someone who could not afford a proper meal. Next is grooming, the face and the hair, because both were clear signals of who you were. Start with the eyes. In ancient Egypt, men and women both painted heavy black lines around their eyes using kohl, a paste made from ground minerals. It was partly practical, cutting the glare of the harsh sun, but it was mostly the look. Dark, dramatic eyes were beautiful, and the green and black pigments cost enough that wearing them well was its own quiet display of wealth. Then the hair. Egyptians often shaved their heads, partly for the heat and cleanliness, and wore wigs instead. A thick, elaborate wig was a status object. The finest were made of real human hair, styled into tight braids and rows, and only the wealthy could afford them. Poorer people made do with wigs of wool or plant fibre, or went without. Beards carried meaning too. In some places, a long, well-kept beard meant wisdom and standing. Egyptian pharaohs wore a false, braided beard strapped to the chin as a sign of authority, and even Hatshepsut, a female ruler, wore one to claim the role. Elsewhere, a clean shave was the mark of a refined person, and untidy hair meant someone who had let themselves go or could not afford to keep up appearances. What tied all of it together was time and money. A perfect face and carefully styled hair told everyone you had servants, free hours, and wealth to spend on your looks, while the people out working the fields had none of the three. Now the quirks, the oddly specific things people went out of their way to find beautiful. Start with the Maya. They prized crossed eyes, the kind where both pupils turn inward toward the nose. Parents would hang a small bead or ball of resin from a string tied across a baby's forehead, dangling it right between the eyes so the child would focus on it and grow up cross-eyed. A permanent inward stare was treated as beautiful and tied to the gods. The Maya worked on the teeth, too. People filed their front teeth into points or notched edges, and the wealthy drilled small holes into them and set in pieces of jade or other green stone so their teeth glittered when they spoke. It was painful, permanent, and a clear sign of status. Then there was the head itself. In Maya culture and many others, families bound a baby's soft skull between two boards or wrapped it tightly for months, slowly shaping it into a long, sloping form. A high, elongated head marked someone as noble, and a person born with a round, ordinary head simply did not have it. And in Greece, a unibrow was a sign of beauty and intelligence in a woman. Those not born with brows that met in the middle drew the gap in with dark pigment, or, by some accounts, glued on a thin strip of goat hair to join them up. To the people living it, none of this looked strange. It looked expensive, and it looked high-born. Now flip it around. Some of the things you would get complimented on today would have counted against you back then, or looked plain ugly. Take a tan and a bit of colour in the cheeks, the healthy glow people chase on beaches and in tanning booths. To most of the ancient world, that glow was the look of a field worker, sunburned and low-born. A wealthy person seeing it would not have thought you looked healthy. They would have thought you looked like hired labour. A lean, hard, muscular body was read the same way. The cut physique people admire in a gym today, with low body fat and visible muscle, often looked like the body of someone who did hard physical labour every day. For a woman especially, visible muscle and a thin frame suggested hunger and a hard life. Straight, bright, natural white teeth in a wide smile could also count against you. In several cultures, a plain white smile was seen as dull or unfinished, which is part of why people in places like Japan blacken their teeth on purpose, treating a glossy black smile as elegant and grown up. A healthy beach tan, a flat stomach, a bright white smile. Walk into the ancient world with all three, and to the people who mattered, you would have looked distinctly poor. Some people changed their looks for good, marking the body itself. Tattoos are old. The oldest preserved tattoos belong to a man known as Ötzi, a body frozen in the Alps for over 5,000 years, his skin still showing dozens of small inked lines. In ancient Egypt, women were buried with tattoos worked into their skin, patterns of dots and dashes across the stomach and thighs. Across the world, ink under the skin marked beauty, status, faith, or the group you belonged to, and the right markings made a person more desirable. Other cultures cut instead of inked. In scarification, the skin is deliberately cut or burned so it heals into raised patterns, leaving permanent designs across the face, chest, or back. A clean, well-formed set of scars showed beauty, maturity, and the ability to take real pain without flinching, which was its own kind of status. People stretched their bodies too, widening earlobes around discs and plugs, or stretching the lower lip around a plate until it held on its own. What looks extreme from the outside was, inside that culture, the mark of someone fully grown, respected, and worth looking at. Softer versions of all of it are still around today, in any tattoo shop or piercing studio. Step back from all of it, and the same thing keeps showing up. Pale skin, soft hands, a full body, a styled wig, jade set in the teeth, a long-shaped skull. On the surface, they have nothing in common. Underneath, they were almost all signs of the same few things. Wealth, because they took money, time, or labour that a poor person did not have. Health and fertility, because a strong, well-fed body meant someone likely to live and to bear children. And status, the plain fact of being born into the right family, or holding the right place in the world. Beauty worked as a signal. At a glance, and without a single word, it showed that you were safe, well off, and worth marrying. A pale, untanned face, a heavy body, an elongated head. None of these were within reach of the average person scraping a living out of the dirt. That was the whole point. They marked the line between the people who had to work to survive and the people who did not. This is also why beauty standards keep changing. They tend to follow whatever happens to be rare and hard to get. When food was scarce, a full body was the prize. Once machines took over the hard labor and food turned cheap, a lean body and a tan, the very things that used to mean hardship, became the new signs of an easy life. Beauty has almost always come down to the same quiet message. Look at me, my life is good. So yeah, that's it. If you sat through this whole thing just to have some guy tell you how ugly you'd be back then, you might as well hit subscribe. Like it on your way out, and I'll see you in the next one.